Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for our monthly series of webinars on various topics relating to innovation, growth, lean, and leadership approaches. I'm your moderator for today. My name is April Lee, and I'm the Managing Director at Lean Focus. Today's session will be led by our Vice President of Innovation, George Ellis, as he will be talking about charting the course for future growth with product portfolio management. Next. And as he moves forward, just a quick reminder that today's presentation, you're going to be seeing the intellectual property of Lean Focus, and it's really only intended for today's use of training for registered attendees. This presentation contains proprietary information to Lean Focus and should not be used, disclosed, or reproduced for any other purpose. Title in and to this presentation remains at all times with Lean Focus. So before we begin with our topic, I'd like to give you some background info into Lean Focus and what we do. I think if we are able to move ahead, my screen is frozen, but George.
Yeah, you want me just to take over?
Move forward.
So I'm on the host of the webinar logistics.
Unfortunately, the screen's not matching what is on yours. So I just want to make sure that our presentation's just aligned up as we keep moving forward.
Okay, let me try something different. I will take my screen off and put it back on in a different mode and see if that helps.
Sounds good. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for your patience while we get this technical issue updated.
And is that better, April? Do you see the host?
No, we see a photo of a family.
They're a wonderful group, but
So while he gets it up and running, I'll give you a little bit of background about Lean Focus and what we do. So Lean Focus is really focused on transforming businesses and being a really critical partner towards your lean journey. And what we try to achieve here is partnering with you in assessing what your strategies are, how your objectives are needed to be met, and then how we might be able to partner with you going forward. So during this webinar, I just want to do some reminders here of that you'll be in listen-only mode, and that there are PDF handouts that are available for download about this topic and about who we are, if you're interested. At the end, we're going to reserve time for questions and answers. So if you can type your questions into the webinar questions panel, we'll go ahead and address those at the end. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to you about a business day later after we conclude. So if you don't see it, check your spam folder. So with that, if we can go ahead, and it looks like George has got it up and running. If you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So a little bit of background about Lean Focus, like I mentioned. What we try to do is help you build a high performance culture. So typically what we'll partner with you on the front end is to really just understand what it is that you're trying to achieve strategically and objectively. With that, we'll help identify partnering or helping develop skill set for driven leadership, engaging your people in the process in itself. We apply our proven systems, so we use a Lean Focus Business System proprietary approach that really helps us use a framework and an approach that is really process-oriented to teach and guide you through achieving your objectives. Behind all of that is the cultural aspect, and we know that there's a lot of change management that needs to occur when trying to build a high-performance culture. So we apply and teach these leading guiding principles, with a Kaizen or continuous improvement mindset and different aspects of your culture that really need to be developed in order to sustain this kind of business system. And then lastly, but most importantly, is are we identifying opportunities to reinvest into growth? What are we doing to drive growth? So it's not just about identifying the bottom line and cost reduction, but what are you trying to do to achieve towards that competitive advantage for the sustainable future? So that's really what Lean Focus does in a nutshell. If we go to the next slide, a little bit about who we've worked with or what we've tried to achieve, you know, we really are industry agnostic. We can apply these tools and principles across any business practice, whether it's production and manufacturing or whether it's transactional based in the office. And so really with this client list that you can see here, we can apply our objectives and our tools and framework accordingly. For the next slide. How we do it, it's our lean focused business system. So it's a tool set and a mindset that we lean on in order to teach people what it is that they need to identify their current situation, waste improvement opportunities, and then what's the future plan and implementation that's going to take to drive those results. And so with this, it might be a little small to read, but what you're looking at is a framework of tools that we use ourselves and teach clients to engage and move ahead in order to drive those sustainable lean cultures. So with that, the next slide, I'll go ahead and introduce George Ellis. Like I mentioned, he's our VP of Innovation, and so I'll turn this over to George now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for your patience with the technical issues. The one thing I did want to say, April was talking about this slide, we're just going to be in the growth system. So there's a lot more about factories and the foundational systems. We're going to be focused. Our talk today is actually just a part of that growth system, and I'll talk about that later. I spent 35 years in industry, practicing engineer, and then moved into managing R&D groups, fell in love with lean, started writing about it, learning about it, and just wanted to do it all the time. And so to that end, I joined the Danaher Business System Office. Some of you might have heard of that, the DBSO. I did that as we led the dental group out of Danaher into its own company, Envista. And then when I had a chance to join Lean Focus and do this all the time, I took it. So today we're going to talk about, we'll really talk about the product portfolio management, which is really the, how do we manage, we've got a lot of engineers working on a lot of complicated things. How do we manage that? You know, and how do we do that in a way that's engaging for our engineers, that makes us successful with our projects and ultimately has us meeting customer values. You'll see the sections here, the little introduction we just did. We'll talk about some problems and then we'll go on to more detail. The first thing I want to say is the innovation journey is a long journey. It's complex. It starts all the way over here where I'm trying to find a new segment I want to serve. I'm working on new research and development. I have new partnerships I'm developing with other companies. I'm going out and getting intellectual property. And it ends all the way over here with you know, successful projects and projects then that launch, and then the launches of the products are commercially successful. And this journey is what? Depends on the company, 5, 7 years, can be more, depending on what company you're in. It's a long journey to get from one end to the other. That's one of the things that makes innovation complex, different from other areas of lean thinking, is just the whole length of what happens. It's just a lot longer than, say, if you were going to go transform a factory. You know, it would be it's a broad set of tools there. And so what we're going to do today, we're just going to focus on this one area, product portfolio management. And that's really the way that we manage these parts of the project after the project is defined. So if you look at this picture I have on screen, on the left-hand side, we're really having this funnel. We're looking at a lot of projects. There's a lot of candidates that come in. We're taking a few of them and then we're moving them through and developing them so they really create value. The product portfolio management really begins when the project has been defined, and it doesn't end until after the project has been successful. Now, that might sound a little different to you coming from you know, a person with an R&D background. I mean, isn't the project pretty much over when the project is completed and I move on to the next project? And the answer to that is absolutely not. We've got to go launch that product. We've got to go find all the little mistakes we made, and we all make them, that a feature that isn't quite what a customer needed, a quality issue that's got to be addressed with a redesign. And then there are a lot of non-technical issues. We've got to get that right. You know, we've got to get the right assets out there to support all of the regions we're launching into. We're not done until our new product has delivered value to our customers. And how do we measure value? Well, Taiichi Ohno and all the lean thinkers since, we measure value by what customers are willing to pay. And if customers aren't buying your product isn't changing the world very much. And so even as an R&D person, we have to think of commercial success as the end of the journey, not just to make money, to keep the company running, which is an important goal in and of itself, but also to say that our product is really making a difference. It's really changing things. So what's the burning platform here? I mean, why are we talking? Why are you, what's going on in the world today that would have you wanting to hear more about how to manage our projects? And the burning platform is really projects disappoint about 50% of organizations. And what are those disappointments? The number one is just late and half-done projects, and projects that perform poorly once they get into a launch. And those two things are pretty closely related, right? Because a project that's late really is usually pretty disappointing in the launch. Customers are already disappointed because you're late. The sales force is already disappointed because you're late. You're probably rushed at the end because you're late. And so, that successful on-time projects and successful launches, they're definitely linked. The second thing is projects exceed the budget. The R&D group is often the most expensive single group in an organization. I'm not, at least in indirect labor, it certainly can be one of the most expensive groups. It's often one of the largest. And so when your teams are developing at half the rate they should be, it's very expensive. And so that's the second thing. It's just that our projects are expensive and we're not getting the value that we need. And so, the survey here that I'm showing you, the top reasons for project failure, and these are things we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. The organizational priorities aren't set, projects move, scope creep, you might have heard that term. The requirements aren't right, which is a nice way of saying we didn't really understand what the customer needed. We don't have a great vision of where we're going. We just keep doing, the next iteration. Let's go ahead and do, version 3.7.2. That'll be so much better than 3.7.1. And then poor communication. People are confused. They're being asked to work on more than they can really do. Those are all typical types of disappointment. And you can see that these reasons they're very common with CEOs, which is who this was given to, and leaders. And the thesis from this survey is that the project management people waste 28 times less if their strategic initiatives are completed successfully. I don't know how you measure that. I'm gonna be honest with you. Measuring costs in R&D is difficult. I can tell you this: when we've employed the methods we're about to talk about, I've watched teams get so much more done that the only way I know how to describe it is they get twice the amount done with the same amount of people because we cut waste. Not only do they get more done, they're happier, retention rates go up, the commercial success goes up, project on time delivery goes up. So when we cut waste, a lot of virtue is released. I want to just pause back for a second and show you a famous picture. You've probably seen this before, but when we think of problems, it's very easy to confuse the symptom, the problem, and the root cause. Okay, so let's talk about those separately. And a lot of times you'll see this tree diagram. Symptoms might be that I have a headache, I have cold chills, I'm tired. The problem is usually something, it should be something measurable. Like here you can see I have a temperature of 103.3. The root cause, perforated appendix. It's very important as we talk to separate causes from symptoms and problems. It's the first step to really start solving, so you'll see us do that. So let's just talk about causes, problems and symptoms of portfolio issues. So you can see some of the symptoms are systemic project slips. I can remember working with teams that in 10 years had never delivered a single project on time. I mean, talk about systemic, not one major project on time. Changing priorities and shifting resources so that, these two things go together, right? Because, the leadership sees that things aren't happening as fast as they need to. They put more, now we got to go fill in revenue with other things. Now we shift priorities. It was over here, but now we got to go generate some revenue quickly because this project is behind. You can see how they're related. Project scope creep. also related, right? If it takes you a long time to complete a project, then what's happening? The world around you is changing. Competitors are introducing new products. You've got to expand you need to expand what your project does. And then disappointing new product revenue. I see this all the time. We spend that money, we have that exciting project. We don't do a great job launching it. Now, sometimes that's because of the product itself. Maybe the product isn't, wasn't done perfectly. It's got some quality issues, but a lot of times disappointing new revenues, we just didn't really launch it well. There was a quality problem that we could have discovered in a week, but we discovered it in a year, or we fixed it in a year. There's a customer complaining, customers are complaining about a feature that's missing, and the R&D group finds out 4 months later. They could have found out 2 weeks later. So there's this sense of they don't launch, they escape. We just let them out and hope for the best. What are the problems we see with these symptoms? Well, late projects, as I've mentioned already a few times, and poor commercial performance. Like I said, these two they're inextricably linked. What are the root causes? Well, here's a few. One I like to mention is just failure. The one I said a second ago. Excuse me. The one I said a second ago, failure to manage the launch process. So we just launch it, and customers don't seem to like it. Let's go find out in 6 months in the boardroom. Forget that. Why don't we go out and find out week by week how people are accepting it and what we can do to navigate the launch to success? A huge amount of gap can be made up by just doing a good launch, a good plan, and then actually following it and tracking it and managing it rather than just letting it loose. Conflicts between sustaining product enhancements, which I would say are minor projects, and then innovative big projects. A lot of confusion and chaos. You guys probably know what I mean. Hey, you need to go, engineer and marketing person. You two need to go work on this product. This is our future. But 3 weeks later, you're pulled off. Somebody calls you into the factory. And then the next day, a customer calls about a problem they're having. You don't know what to do. And it's not really managed. Just it can be chaotic. Low quality reviews of critical projects. I see this all the time. We have a project, it's going along, but it's doing all right. But when we come to reviews, the reviews aren't good and problems remain hidden, and they go through the life of the project only to be discovered by the customer, which is the last place you want to discover them. And then failure to ensure, I write here, the failure to ensure an unambiguous project definition at the start. I mean, this is the #1 cause of scope creep, where we don't really define the project. We don't have time. We got to get going. We don't have that time to really define the project carefully. And then we define it 6 months in. And if you're an engineer who's been on a project like that, I certainly have, that is no fun. You get to go redo a lot of work that if you'd just been more diligent in the beginning, you wouldn't have had to have done. All of these things are things I've experienced personally. I imagine a lot of you on the webinar have experienced them as well. And these are all areas that a strong project portfolio management process can improve through reduction of waste. So the first thing I want to talk about is strategy and innovation. How does strategy link to innovation? Because that's where our management starts. So I want you to think of the portfolio management in 3 major areas. And if you would keep this in mind for the rest of the talk, think of 3 areas. #1, there's a strategy. What my company wants to do over the next 1, 2, 3 years. Maybe it's written down on a piece of paper. Maybe it's really kind of in the boss's head. But there's a direction you're going. Every company has a direction they're going. And we need to know, how do new products fit into it? Because for most companies that are trying to grow, new products are an important part of that strategy. And we need to understand what the expectations are. I can't tell you how many times I've been involved where the management of the company has a lot of expectations around what's going to happen in new product development, but the people in new product development don't understand that at all. They just sort of come in every day and work on the project. So we want to get a clear connection between strategy, planning, and deployment and what we're doing with new products. The second area is individual project reviews. I have a project, these guys want $3.5 million to start the project, says the president of the company. I'm going to go do a review to see if we are ready to hand over those resources to start that $3 million project. Or here's a team that says we're ready to launch. Are we really ready to launch? Let's pull the whole management team in and see if we're really ready to launch. So I wrote these gates. You guys know phase gates, often called stage gate systems. There's gates and there's phases in between. Pretty much all R&D companies are using a system something like this. And so at major points along the way, we need to get individual approvals because we're spending a lot of money and we're also putting the company's name on the line. And then the last one is the one that I see the least of, which is how do we review the whole portfolio, the portfolio as a whole? And how are we doing with our overall project on time delivery, our overall delivery of revenue from our launch projects? And so we'll talk about that. So strategy, individual major projects, and then the portfolio in aggregate. Think of those three areas because they're going to keep coming back as we're talking. So we teach at Lean Focus, we teach a method originally named by Toyota, Hoshin Conry. We call it strategy deployment. It's the same tool, just under it's just an English name. But basically, what a company does is they decide what are the breakthroughs they need. How do they wind around to what we're doing this year? And I'm just jumping to the end of the story here for this presentation. What is the target to improve? The most important metrics for our strategy. And a lot of those will drive right into innovation. So if we think of innovation, we might think about are our projects on time? That's a good metric. Is our revenue meeting expectations over the first 2 or 3 years of launch? Are we getting good revenue growth? Those are the sorts of TTIs that people pick when they're TTI target to improve. Those are the kinds of TTIs that are really driven by innovation. Now, if I'm working in innovation as a manager or as a technical lead or even as a working engineer, I want to know these things. I want to understand how is what I do tied to the importance of what's happening at the company. And so the more that we can get this on paper and be transparent about it, the more successful we're going to be. Now, if you look at these as our most important metrics, keep these in mind. Remember, I talked about the third thing was managing the whole portfolio. Well, this is how we structure, how we manage the portfolio. So this is one of the ways by tying metrics from our strategy into the new product portfolio. We'll come back and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Why is this important? Well, think about strategy really drives investment. I remember, strategy, the best way to know you have strategy is to see that you're not doing something you otherwise would. If your strategy is always to go add another thing, that's not really strategy. I like to say that Coco the gorilla can always find something else to be interested in. The hard part about strategy is defining what we're not going to do so we can go do those things we need to do really well. And you can see the way I've got it broken down here is you can think of strategy as it relates to innovation. Now, let's be clear here. There's parts of strategy that are not related to innovation. I might want to go expand into Eastern Europe, with a commercial strategy. I may want to go create a new shared services center in a low cost in a place where the business has a low cost to operate. Those things are not related to innovation. We're only talking about the parts of strategy here that are related to innovation. And we can break those into three, which is innovation breakthroughs, that big new product that's really going to make a difference. Innovation project execution, just taking the projects we have and getting them moving through the process on time. And then innovation revenue, satisfying our customers, getting our projects that have been launched, making sure the launches are successful, customizing, responding to the FDA, making sure that we deal with quality issues. And so think about those. And a lot of companies divide into these three areas, which I would say technology development, and that can be internal or external or a mix of both. Development, which is where the lion's share of R&D and marketing resources are spent, new big projects for a lot of companies, that is. And then sustaining, what am I doing for those things to keep everything running on time? And so by knowing what our strategy is, that will give us a thoughtful way to divide how we're going to invest. Remember I talked earlier about that chaos that happens when sustaining and technology and product development are all mixed and the same people are doing the same things and they're called by different people and don't know what to do. Well, this is where we can be deliberate about how much we're investing where and manage that investment to give those people clarity and direction on where they're going so they can go win the game they're playing. What about when you pick an innovation metric? This is an area that Lean Focus helps a lot of people with because you see on the left, I wrote a bunch of innovation metrics. And why did I stop? Because I just ran out of space. There are so many innovation metrics that are available. But here's the thing. Can you manage a process to 25 or 30 metrics? No, you can't. You never will. You can manage a process to a handful of key metrics. That doesn't mean we don't measure other things and look at them from time to time, kind of the way you might look at your oil pressure gauge or check engine light while you're driving from time to time. You don't manage your trip looking at the oil gauge or the check engine light. You manage the trip looking at other things like let's say the speedometer might be your really key metric that we want to keep moving at a certain speed so we get there on time. But there are a lot of metrics. That ability to pick the 2 or 3 metrics that are really going to drive change in our organization, that's very difficult. And that's an area that we always find people need help with because, this way of looking at the world is easy, except for it doesn't drive action. When we get to 2 or 3, we drive a lot of action. And that's why that need to focus is there. The 3 that my own personal view, the 3 that I've seen work the best, the 3 that I've shown you here. Now, are these the right 3? No, of course not. And this isn't even a complete list, but I would say something like develop a system where we manage our projects to be on time on spec, that we manage our launch revenue so that we get what we thought we were going to get when we started, and then are we really resourcing R&D well? I find this to be a great way to this is a great innovation metric. How are we managing our team? If I go into a company and I find that there are people that are being assigned at 150% or 200% of their time, I already know we have a process out of control. Think about it. When you tell somebody to go do twice as much as they can do, they're not going to do it. So number 1, they're going to lose the game. They get to decide by how much. Number 2, when you give them 200%, they're going to go do the part they can do. Maybe they'll do 110, maybe they'll do 120 for a little while. They'll work those extra hours. But you're not going to get that systemically. So one of the first things I look for is under/over allocation and track that, because when you have a group of innovators that is well managed and clear about what they're doing, you'll see it in their allocation. So there's a couple of thoughts on that. So let's talk now about new product development. So when I think about new product development, I already talked a little bit about the phase gate system, right? We need phase gate systems. If you're an engineer, I remember the first time I was introduced to a phase gate system, I thought, oh, how boring. Someone's telling me how to do these things. Of course, it's not that at all. What they're really telling you is these are the things that need to be done to be successful. And as time goes by, you more and more appreciate that guidance so that you know what done means. And so, the phase gate process it's very powerful. I just wrote a newsletter about it not very long ago. I'll give you a link to it in a minute ago about how they do bloat and they do get too many requirements, but the basic idea is good. And then we make sure that our projects meet our standards, that we can actually build them and deliver them, and it aligns communication across stakeholders. So what's a phase gate system in new product development look like? Now, I want to draw your attention to this. First off, we begin with commercial milestones. We're not in the phase gate yet. But if every company, I've been to companies and seen phase gate systems that had 8 phases. I've seen 3 phases. They're all given different names. They have different things. If you're in a medical company, it's different from your software company, but everybody has these 3 points. There's a point where I'm looking at a project and I'm considering developing it. There's a point where I say, we are doing this project, let's start assigning resources. And there's a point where we say it's ready for market. Those points can be blurs, they can be a mess, but everybody's got some, at least the aspiration to be able to say all 3 of those things, be able to talk about all 3 of those things in a project. These are commercial milestones. When I get a phase gate system, you're gonna almost always find that some of the gates align to these commercial and some of these are more technical. So for example, in this system, there's a company that has gate 2, and that's where they commit the resources. They have an internal gate. Maybe they're doing capital release. Maybe they're doing manufacturing validation, whatever it is. But then there's another gate that aligns to launch. We're going to be most concerned in this process with those gates that align to the commercial milestones. And we're going to be less concerned with what are sometimes called the internal gates. Okay, the gates that are really more, they're really more, I call it inside baseball. They're only engineers and experienced marketing people would recognize them. Now, inside those gates, there are these phases that have these different requirements, and you see I just put in some example requirements so you get sort of an idea. of the kinds of things we have. I'm sure your company has something like this. If you're a medical company, by law, you have to have it. It's usually put in something called a quality management system, or QMS. There's generally a development side. There are things you have to do to satisfy the FDA or whatever agency it is that regulates your work. If you're not a medical company, if you're also, I think the other one is if you're in transportation, it's the same thing. There are a lot of legal requirements, but I don't care where you are in the manufacturing, software, medical world, you're going to have some kind of a phase gate system to divide this up. Otherwise, you have this 2-year project that just starts, and at the end of 2 years it's done, and that doesn't work very well. So we think of it, we break it into pieces, and then we go through, make sure the pieces are good before we go on to the next step. In Lean, on the factory floor, we do something very similar. When we build a product, we call it single piece flow, where we do pieces one at a time and move them through. This is something like that idea, but on a much, much grander scale. So a phase gate system, I put down here in orange, is probably the most single unique aspect of product development. There are lots of projects that run in the world without a phase gate system, but product development always has it. So what we do is we're managing, what the portfolio management system does, a big part of what they do is they manage people going through those transitions. So that's a part of what they do. Now, if you have a monthly meeting and that's all of what you do, well, I don't think that's enough. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So I said a moment ago, focus on those key milestones, especially what's the moment we commit those millions of dollars to that project, and what's the moment we launch? Because that's where, those are the places that are the highest risk. And those are the places where when you make a mistake in those places, they are very hard to recover from compared to the other areas. So, I think we've all been parts. Have any of you ever, maybe everybody hasn't been part, I haven't seen this as often, but launch the product and a month later announce that we're unlaunching it. Holy cow, that's like such a mess. 3 months later, you launch it again and nobody believes you, including your sales staff. So, that's what I mean by just massive, you're taking massive risks, because this is where the money is spent. If you think about where am I, if my innovation group is spending $40 million a year, I bet for a lot of you anyway, 30 million of that 35 million will be spent in here. The early stuff is not usually so expensive, and the late stuff is not quite as expensive. So here is where the risk is. So let's talk for a moment though about sustaining and customization, because we all need a sustaining group. You might say, why do I have to do that small stuff? Well, I'm telling you, if the FDA calls with an office action, you're going to address it. If you have a product that's failing in the field and you're having to bring them back and fix them, you're going to address it. You have to address sustaining issues, but don't allow yourself to fall for what I call the myth of the sustaining must-do monolith. Okay, what do I mean by that? There's a myth that I see in all kinds of innovation groups that there's a group that owns sustaining, and they just say all of these sustaining things, they all have to be done. And then you say, like, why do they have to be done? And then they'll give an example like I just gave you. Well, the FDA has an office action. We have to respond to it. Oh, well, of course you have to do that. But there's a lot of things that go on in sustaining that don't look like that. So what I would, first thing I would say in the portfolio management that you want to do is divide out those things. There are some things that you have to do and they're just difficult to quantify. There aren't nearly as many as you think, but there are some, and we're going to do those. There are some that we have to do, either by law or by common sense. Your largest customer says, I'm leaving you if you don't fix this. I'm not looking for a metric. We're going to come fix it. But what about the rest? What I see a lot of people do is they just create this monolith and they don't realize that sustaining can be treated like a business. So take out responding to FDA office actions. Okay, you can take that out of the list. We're just going to do that. Take out, we're a firefight at a major customer. We're going to do that. But what about reducing the material cost of my products? I can make that a business. I can do that. I can say every year, I'm going to take 3% out of my purchase price. I'm going to drive projects in R&D and manufacturing that are going to make that happen. I'm going to invest. I'm going to take out, let's say, $2 million of material costs. I'm going to invest $500,000. And you can make a business out of it, and you can manage it like a business. That's not part of the monolith. Or what about customization? Hey, I had this customer call and they want this. Really? They really want it. How do you know they want it? Well, they told me they did. Well, in lean thinking, we measure customer value by what they're willing to pay. So are these customers willing to pay for that customization? Oh, well, let's make a business out of it. And so I've seen companies do this. We make a business, and I have this little bowler chart here. This looks like a bowling frame, but it's really just capturing your metrics month by month to say, hey, I'm going to have a team that manages the business. I'm going to do daily management. We call it daily. Really, the meetings are typically weekly. Daily is sort of a carryover from the factory floor, but the point is regular cadence problem solving. We're going to have resources assigned to us. We're going to get some money to go do this, and we're going to review the portfolio of what we're doing. So think about another one is expanding registration. I love that one. So a lot of times you go to the sustaining guy and say, hey, how much are we spending on registering? Oh, it doesn't matter. We have to respond to office action. Like, wait a minute. I'm not asking you to respond to an office action. I'm asking you, what if we expand our registration area into, let's say, China? How much does that cost? And how much does that get us in terms of revenue? It can be a business. That's not like responding to an office action. That's a choice you make. And then quality. You know, everything doesn't have to be, we have to stop. Quality is number one. We've got to go do it. There's a quality level of PPM that you're willing to accept, and you can drive towards it. But again, like a business, how much are we going to invest? What do we want to see the results go to? So when you will make sustaining, and for me, most of the companies that I've seen, the part of sustaining that can be a business is more than half, probably 3/4, let's say on average. For some companies, it's almost all of the business, but let's say 90%, but let's say 60 to 90% of your sustaining can be a business that can be managed like a business. And then you can use product portfolio management team to review that business in aggregate, not every project, but in aggregate. How are you guys doing? So let's go and talk about the details of product portfolio management now. We think of it as, when we think about the actual agenda of the meeting and building of this meeting, think of it as a monthly meeting. There are really 6 things that we want to do. Okay, first off, I'm going to go through each one of these 6, but let me just cover them real quickly. We want to have a well-managed meeting. We want to look at the whole portfolio. We want to have a dashboard that gives us a single point of truth. Like Don Reinertson said, most managers have given clear and accurate information, make fast and good decisions. That's a paraphrase, but let's get a dashboard together. So we're getting our data together, because that's the best thing we can do to help our management make better decisions. We want to manage the allocation of resources very actively and in a place where people are clear what they're supposed to be doing. We want to go through remember I talked about the project reviews? Every month we probably have 1, maybe 2 key projects we want to take a deep look at. Hey, we're getting ready to launch XYZZY. We're getting ready to fund Project Plover. Let's go through what's been done there, and we'll talk about those. And then finally, we want to improve that phase gate system. Don't be like so many companies start a phase gate system, and they just keep adding and adding, and they add so many rules, and some of them out of date, some of them were never needed, and they add so many rules that you can't follow them, and they just keep adding rules. Well, product portfolio management, part of what they want to do is manage the phase gate system. Make sure we have everything in there we need and get rid of the stuff we don't. So management team present. Okay, we want our managers present. So what do we do? Define the agenda, focus on the areas where we need leadership, and manage the clock. Nothing drives managers crazy like meetings that run over and they can't then make their next meeting. Second thing, use strategy to drive KPIs. We already talked about that quite a bit a few minutes ago. So I'm gonna just pass this by, but this is that section we talked about earlier where I showed you how we could actually get KPIs or key performance indicators out of strategy. Let's get some dashboards up and running. And so that we have clear data, single source of truth where people can really understand what the implications of their decisions are. If I move a resource from here to here, I see that moves that project from here to here. I understand that I'm going to delay that revenue. However, that gives me resources to go work on this project. I understand. That's how you get the best decisions, with sharp dashboard design and in visualization in general, but in product portfolio management, dashboards critical to design. I've spent days in Kaizens doing nothing but designing dashboards for project portfolio management. It's so important when you have that team together, so precious to take that hour or 2 you have and not have to spend 30 minutes explaining something somebody could see in 2 minutes if you would just be diligent in your visualization of it. And then resource allocation. What a thorny issue. You know, if you think about, you have a typical, let's take an innovation team that's 100 people, and maybe there's 50 projects that are going on in the company, and we have to allocate those 100 people to those 50 projects. And then we have to look at them, you know, is it week by week, month by month, year by year? You know, and by the time you're done, you can have 100 people, you can be looking at 50 projects, you can be looking at 5 time horizons. I did the math on that. That's 25,000 little pieces of data. You'll never manage something like that. And so simplify. We need to simplify the resource allocation so we can walk out every month and say, these are the people working on this project. These projects for this month, you go do that. And if someone comes and tells you different, well, we're the leadership team. We told you to work on that. You just send them right back to us. I used to do that all the time. Oh, what a relief it was for my engineers. When I remember one engineer just talking to me about the frustration he had that all day long his phone was ringing and salespeople and factory people and application people were coming and telling him what to do. And I said, here's your job. For the next 4 weeks, you work on this. You tell them that. If they have a problem, just send them to me and I'll talk with them. You know, it's amazing. 80% of those issues are resolved right then. The person knows it's not important enough to do that. And if it really is that important, they can raise it to a leadership level and go get those resources and we'll adjust. But take the chaos out of your engineer's life by getting resource allocation simple. I have a case study here that we did with Pampered Chef where we came in with them. Part of what we were doing was revising their phase gate system. And so you'll see some examples here of that, but we were able to grow. Part of that is, of course, the management of those projects that went through that system, and the end results were their revenue grew from 300 to 800 million in 3 years, and they were able to launch subscription services that generate significant revenue. You know, we were able to bring a lot of good, and I always want to say this is the point where I come to. When you have a successful team, you have a team that's winning games. You have a group of engineers, they're assigned to a project. You know, you're not talking about somebody who comes in and just works for $1, you know, whatever dollars per hour they make. Engineers aren't like that. No professionals are, right? Professionals are people that spent years just getting an education. And those that are far along in the field have spent even more years acquiring experience. They want to be successful. It's more than just a pay to play. And so when they can be given when they get a project and they can win, they go win. When they see they win, that gives them all sorts of engagement. And so what I've seen in these kinds of situations where we apply these techniques, engagement goes up. I remember one assignment I had when I joined, 7, 8 people were leaving a year. 3 years later, 2 people were leaving. I remember one of them left because her partner left town and she had to leave to go to be with him. So, you know, we had a team of over 100 people. We were losing almost nobody. And our engagement scores were rocketing up. At the same time, we made the revenue that we promised. Our projects were coming in on time. We won a major innovation award for us. So this elimination of waste through lean thinking, it brings lots of virtue. The only people that pay are your competitors. It's good for everybody involved to get rid of the waste in your systems, and that's what we focus on. So let's say you're interested in this talk and you want to talk about next steps. Let me just go through that for a minute. First, you can download, this is our product portfolio management workshop. We can come to your site and we can also do this virtually, although we get better results when we come in person. But if you guys can't manage, you know, 2 days for a lot of everybody out, we can manage through multiple 2-hour sessions spread out over several weeks, but we can help you. And this is a single page that explains that. You can download it and you can look at the details and see if that's something that you're interested in starting on. And that's a very direct way to get started in product portfolio management. A second thing is that just where there's a lot of activity for us in innovation itself. And so I'm doing a month for 2023, I'm doing monthly webinars. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you'll join me in future months, but right along the end of each month, we'll have a webinar on a topic like this. And then finally, if you don't mind me sneaking a little ad, I've got a couple of books that are available on Amazon. And if you'd like to see more about how I think about this, and this book on the left, Improve, I poured 5 years into writing that book. Part of the reason was I didn't really understand it very well when I started, and I wrote the book twice and threw it all in the garbage can. because it just wasn't getting there. And so, whatever let's say at that time, that would have been 2020 when I published it, or 2019, what I knew is pretty well captured there. So if you find this interesting, you'd like to know more, these books are certainly an option. Lean Focus. We also offer a series of webinars, not just on innovation, but on the entire business system, in the factory, in leadership, in sourcing, and all parts of operations, in HR. So think of lean thinking, how we can cut waste out of any parts of your company, and help you with that. We've got, like I said, a series of quite a few webinars here that can help. And so we like in this, I like this quote. So instead of worrying, let's think and plan, a famous guy. With that, I think I'll go and see if I want to thank you first off for allowing me to speak to you for this time, and to see if you have any questions.
George, thank you so much. That was a very enlightening presentation, and really appreciate all your practical applications and approaches, even considerations for how innovation can just be a growth center on top of not just being considered a cost center. It's really a growth center, and sustaining businesses can really provide incremental revenue in other ways. So with that, I'm going to turn to the audience and let you know if you have any questions for George. We're going to be answering these live, so go ahead and type them into your chat function. I do have a question that's come up here. So George, it says, I'm not clear how this improves engagement. Do you have some examples of this?
Yeah, that's a question that comes up a lot, because people don't connect a strong management meeting with engaged engineers. So let me think of an example. Actually, one comes to mind. So there was there's one company I was working with. I can't go into a lot of detail, but let's say there was a product they were selling. There's a lot of tooling in it. It was millions of dollars to create this product. It's a product in the color business. And so it's measuring color, and it's very expensive to redo it. And we went for years without upgrading it. And the head of the technical guy, the technical lead, they were very frustrated about this, because we would go in with a project, and the project would be, we're going to spend millions of dollars redoing this, and the answer would be, what new revenue are we going to get? And the answer would be, we don't really know, so we'll think about it. And that went on for years. So what we did to address that issue was, we did a couple things. First off, we took that product and said, guys, how can we take this product, and while we're redoing it, add another couple of features so we can expand it into a different application, into a related application. And that's going to give us incremental revenue. Okay, so that helps, right? Maybe not enough incremental revenue to justify the whole project, but a little bit of incremental revenue. Well, it really helped a lot. The second thing is, let's go in with a clear yes, no question. Okay, so we didn't go in with a 35-page PowerPoint and have people talk about, but it's going to be so expensive and how long will it take? Let's think about it. We used the Toyota A3 process. We got the entire question on one page. We showed what was happening, where our competitors were, how we were going to generate incremental revenue. Within 6 weeks, that project was approved. Okay, so we went from years of trying to ask, not really getting listened to. You guys know, you're doing your PowerPoint, right? And you're going through your 25-page PowerPoint slide in front of all of the management. Half of them are looking at their computer doing their email. They're not listening. And we were able to get to a very short, clear presentation. We were able to show our case in just a few minutes. And we were able to turn that to getting approval for a major new project. Well, I mean, the technical guy who had been leading that for years was just delighted. He was so engaged, because finally he had a means of talking to managers, to the management team, in a way that they would be able to respond to him and be able to do something useful. So that improved his engagement. Then he is having an engineering meeting, talking to the engineering team about, hey, we've been falling behind in this area, now we're going to grow in this other area. So the whole team is starting to, they see a little more vision for where the company is going. They don't just feel like we're always behind in this important area. So their engagement is going up. The project did come true. We did it. We got it done more or less on time. That was more engaging. And so by having, by having a very clear, the engine, I do want to say this, we had to start on the R&D and product management side. The management, you could go with a 35-page PowerPoint and they would look at it with you. We had to figure out how to get a sharp story that someone could really understand. My old boss, Kevin Lane, used to say, give the boss a yesable proposition. And so we created a yesable proposition and we got a yes. So that's just one example of how having a strong meeting, which all of that story I just told you, that all hinged on having a monthly meeting where people arrived, where we kept the meeting on time and fairly crisp. They were typically 90 minutes. We didn't do 8-hour sessions. So we had a platform, and that was a key to a lot of virtue in terms of engagement.
And George, I think what you touched on here in driving engagement is when people have a visualization of whether they're winning or losing, clear KPIs, it helps drive the conversation forward with fact-based decision-making. So to that point, Kristen B asks this question. Do you have any recommendations on dashboards that could be downloaded or where to start in creating one?
That's a great question. And, honestly, I've always found the dashboards have to be customized so much because every organization, your dashboard is not you creating a new way to make decisions. Your dashboard is you discovering how your organization is or needs to be making decisions. And so what happens, there's no dashboard I can go grab. I need to nurture my company's decision-making approach. So when I start doing dashboards, I just do what everybody else does. First off, I just listen to the company and understand, where are they? Are they in I'm in a startup mode. I just got to get this product out, or I just launched a whole bunch of products. I just got to get these successful. Companies are in different places. And then then what I do is I just go look at series of dashboards and create a Kaizen event where we engage the managers in creating the dashboard. Now, they're not going to come sit with you for 2 days, Kristen. I know that. You're not going to get the president of a company to come sit with you for 2 days to do a Kaizen on a dashboard. But here's what you can do. You can get a group of people who are, let's say, at the next level below that. They will sit with you for a day, maybe, and then you can get the president of the company or whoever to come maybe every 4 hours, come in for an hour and have discussions. And over a couple of days, you can build a dashboard as a team. I just have never had much luck saying, here's your dashboard, start using it. It's something that it's almost like the team has to build it so they own it and then they start using it. And then what's going to happen, here's the next thing that's going to happen that's good out of that, is every time you meet, you're going to find a thing in the dashboard that can be improved, and you're going to go improve it. So today's dashboard is going to be very different from the dashboard 3 months from now. And so you're on this, so I would think of the dashboard as starting your journey on continuous improvement in your product portfolio management meeting. And kick it off with a day or two Kaizen, and then start improving.
And George, you touch on it, that it's the dashboard itself is a mechanism for reviewing, but the inputs that go into it, it's really cross-functional. So it can't just be built by one person. It's really going to be an input process from multiple different stakeholders, right?
That's such a great point, April. It's often said that product development is the most cross-functional activity taken on in any organization. And I think you just hit the nail right on the head, that if you you've got to have, all the people that are supposed to use and trust that dashboard, they've all got to be part of it. But, just to give you let me give you a simple example of where I had a dashboard failure, just so you can sort of see the other side. We had a dashboard that was put together. We used, what was that old database called? I can't think. It was the old Microsoft database that everybody used to use. I always remember Access. And we had somebody put in Access data. Okay, so everybody had to go into Access, and we had this big database, and everybody had to go put their data in. And we got into a big discussion around the dashboard that was built from the Access database. And after a half an hour, and the president of the company, I remember he got very upset during the time. Let's be honest, he wasn't at his best. He got upset. He's angry. He's fussing. We found out the data was bad. And there had been a problem in Access, and 2 people had changed the data at the same time. And he never trusted that dashboard again. We never had another discussion where he was willing to put his reputation like that. And so, build your dashboard, keep it simple, build it cross-functionally, have ownership so that there's not one person responsible, because if you get it wrong, it's painful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's very valuable. Thank you, George. So to that point, when we're talking about resourcing, you alluded to it earlier in the presentation about consideration of resourcing. This question is, we have people that do long-term development and sustaining. What's a practical way to divide a person?
Yeah, that's a really hard problem. And unfortunately, I wish I could just wave a magic wand and say, we're going to take every person and they're all going to be assigned to clean projects and there's no multitasking. That's just not reality. I can think of my top scientist and, in one of my assignments. That fellow was developing technology. He was attending project reviews because his advice was so critical on what we did in the projects we were developing. And then he would go on major quality issues when we had a problem with the part because he understood the technology and the product and the components more than anybody else. That guy was doing all three. And I remember my boss saying, you need to separate people directly. I was like, you can't, we need him. So how do you manage that? And I showed a slide a little bit earlier, and I can give you an example of ways to do it. If you can't, the term that people use for assigning somebody full-time is called ring fencing. So that's where you put somebody on a project and that's all they can work on. And if you have the luxury of ring fencing, do it. The problem I get, and I want to take you guys to a slide here that we started with. Give me just 1 second to find it. It was right up at the top. But if you don't have that ability to ring fence, this is where I would guide you. So make a deliberate decision in your organization about how much you want to spend where. That's the first thing. That bottom line is so important that I begin with, and it's not so much the dollars, it's the people. And now what you're going to find is some, like I've just shown here, 15, 55, and 35%, right? It changes all over the place. I've seen that 35 be 80. But the point is, for your organization, find that. You're going to find inside each of those buckets, you're going to find that some of those people are going to naturally ring fence, okay? So let's look at development. 55% of my resources need to be there. 30% of those people, I can say that's all they do. They work on projects. But the other 25%, I have to share. And so, ring fence what you can. If you can ring fence it all, you're very lucky. Just do it. But most people can't. And then you need to figure out techniques. So one technique that I teach is something called a Kanban board. So if you've ever seen David Anderson's Kanban board, he's the guy, if you've ever seen the Kanban board in Scrum, Agile Development, he's the guy that invented that use of Kanban. He wrote that book in 2002. He used to work for Microsoft. Amazing guy. We used a Kanban board to manage sustaining. And what did we do? We said, hey, engineer, you are 50-50, this project and sustaining. How do I know how much sustaining to do? Well, you assign your hours each week and you don't go over that. And sustaining, you spend that other time. You make sure you get that, your 20 hours a week in on the project. How do I know what to do? Well, we're going to pull projects off of the Kanban board one at a time and just do them as we can. So that if it's in the Kanban board, we're going to have a weekly discussion. We're going to pick the right project. And that was a way for us to keep sustaining limited. Now, if we weren't getting through the Kanban board fast enough, we could go over and change this 35 to 40 and reassign. But the point I'm trying to get at is be deliberate. Don't give engineers this terrible decision of being told to go do it and then being called by 6 people to go work on things and not know what to do. Give them a game they can win. This is one way to do it.
George, that's great. Very practical approach towards that problem. So it looks like we're at the top of the hour, and we appreciate all the questions that have been submitted. George, thank you so much for your time and just their expertise on applying towards this topic. We'd like to thank our audience members. Again, this recording version will be emailed out in about approximately 1 business day, and also available on the leanfocus.com website. So with that, thank you all for attending, and thank you, George, for your presentation, and we wish you all a great day. Thanks, you.
Thanks, April. Appreciate the MC, and thank you, everybody. I hope to hear from you all.